Welcome to Eternal Paradigm. Together we're uncovering the human experience and exploring physical, mental, emotional and spiritual stories with me, your host, Amy Ravel. Welcome to this episode of Eternal Paradigm. I hope you're enjoying your journey to find you. In this episode, I'm joined by the Potts family from Leeds. I thought it would be really nice to explore the Potts family travel bug, where it comes from, and to learn about their time as a family living in Perth, Australia, what they did out there, what they learned out there. So adventures are fun at the best of times, and I love the sound of a good old family adventure. What is absolutely clear currently is that not all of us, but most of us don't actually have the quick and easy pleasures of traveling like we used to, basically. And even though it's not ideal, as we're so used to living in a world where everything is so close by, it's so possible to get somewhere, where I do feel that there are some benefits in staying put, because it will help. It will help reduce aviation pollution levels and lets the Earth have a little bit of a breather. So while we do our bit to observe or not to observe lockdown or tiered measures as there are in the UK, or whatever measures there are where you are, the one thing we can definitely do, I think, is to think back, reminisce and remind ourselves of all of the memories we've made while traveling. So in this conversation, I asked the Potts family many questions. And now when I think about it on reflection, I know there are so many more things that I could have asked. We talk about living abroad, itchy feet and traveling, being sporty and fit, because that's another theme. And, the ups and downs of moving and living abroad and what they all did and learned, not only about each other, but about themselves. What also started happening in the conversation is that there was an uncovering of a bit of a love story. Now, I admit I am an absolute sucker for a good old love story. It's a story of connection between two people, which transcends culture, background, and race. But the lived reality shines a light on the darker side of the lack of acceptance. It becomes apparent when hearing my guests that not everyone really sees the value of each of us as humans. The limitations of our belief systems means that there are still many hang-ups about cross-cultural relationships. And even though now things might be changing, according to my guests, there's still headway to be made here. I'm sure you will enjoy hearing the Potts family, and I'm really pleased to bring you this episode. Remember to leave your feedback, reviews, and suggestions on social media posts and on podcast platforms, including Apple Podcasts. You can share posts, all the social media posts, and you can also share episodes with friends and family who you think will enjoy listening to this podcast. Enjoy the episode.
I'm Grant. I'm Dad, I guess. I'm a new 50-year-old, and pleased to be here.
So I'm Trupti, and I'm Grant's wife and mummy to the next two that are going to introduce themselves.
Yeah. Hi, I'm Maya. I've recently turned 18, and I'm the eldest of the two Potts children, the Littlies.
Hi, I'm Jay, and I'm 15.
That'll do.
Thank you for the introductions. Now, we are talking today because as a family, you went on an adventure, and I have sent you some questions that I think it would be great to talk about. But I mean, I'm happy for you to just put it out there and start with kind of almost like a timeline, what year it was, what happened, how you ended up going to Australia and then coming back, if we can kind of put it into context.
Well, I can start. I guess it was probably my fault, most of it, the big upheaval. We moved to Australia. It was Christmas 2012. We actually flew out just at the end of December 2012. I'd gone out a couple of months before, but I guess the whole sort of journey started quite a long time ago in terms of sort of need and the lust for travel for Trupti and I. We met at university and travelled together after university for a couple of months. And then my first job out of university happened to be in Hong Kong. So I moved out there in 1994 for just under 4 years. And Trupti came out and joined me for a good part of 3 years out there. And I think that the seeds were probably sown around about that time for Australia, probably subconsciously, I would say. One of the companies I was working for in Hong Kong was Australian, and we knew a lot of Australian folk out there and had some good friends. And some of our friends from the UK and Hong Kong ended up moving out to Australia. So we always knew that we would visit there at least. But in 2012, I was self-employed and happened to be working all over the place, really. And I was in India for a few months during 2012 for about 4 months. And I had the opportunity while I was there to talk to a friend who was already out in Australia working. And I kind of thought, I'm working all over the place. I'm never spending much time with the family at the minute. Why don't we look at that as an opportunity? So we did.
Yeah.
And it only took a couple of months really to sort something out and end up going. Yeah. So from my point of view, it was years in the making, but fairly inevitable, really, in some ways. Don't know if you feel the same.
Yeah, go for it.
How do I feel? Well, they call them construction widows in the industry. And as you know, a bridge or a major construction project doesn't happen within a 30-minute commute. So I was used to Grant moving all over the place. In fact, our move from London to Leeds was as traumatic as Leeds to Australia for lots of different reasons. Jay was a mere 11 weeks old at that time. So I was used to Grant's lust for adventure and itchy feet and always looking for another exciting opportunity. And yes, it all happened extremely quickly, which in a way is probably a good thing, because I think if we'd mulled it over so much more, we may not have gone. So from sort of Grant coming home from India and saying, there's this opportunity, there's a job going, to actually having the whole house packed up, bearing in mind we'd extended this house and got it in exactly the way that we'd wanted it, ready to just leave it all, happened extremely quickly. Yeah.
It was about 2 months.
Two and a half months, something like that. Yeah. So, yeah.
Wow. That's interesting that you said, had you thought about it, had you kind of been mulling it over, you would have potentially talked yourself out of it.
Well, I was working with a dear friend, and, thankfully she still is a very, very dear, special friend. And we had an educational business together that was doing very well, that still is doing very well. And we were delivering training to teachers and delivering workshops and doing some outreach community work up and down the UK. And that was there were lots of tough decisions to make during this process, lots of them. But that one was up there in terms of speaking to my very dear friend, my business partner, to say, I'm not going to be in a position to be part of this business anymore because of my family circumstances. But yeah, and so I guess one of those things, because it all happened so suddenly, I felt almost that I didn't have an option, and we couldn't wait any longer because the children were a certain age that were easy to transport, if that makes sense. They were young enough to sort of cajole, to con, to not take them away from actually Maya. Maya will probably talk to you a little bit about that, maybe after me, But Jay, when we spoke about this as a family, said, Jay, how did you feel? Well,
yeah, I don't really remember any of it. It's quite a while ago.
How old were you?
I was 7.
So still sort of, yeah, Jay's days were filled with running around, walking through the woods, collecting twigs and snails. He was quite oblivious to this whole process, although he still had some really cool friends, established mates, didn't he? But yeah, I think Maya might be able to talk to you a little bit more about how she finds out about us moving.
Yeah, so I remember it was like one of our walks home from school, and Mum kept asking me, how would you feel if you moved to Australia? And I used to just shout and scream, no, I don't want to leave, I don't want to leave. And she said, even if we're going to the sunny beaches and I was still adamant that we weren't going. And then one day at home, I remember picking up the phone, and then a lady with an Australian accent asked to speak to Dad. And from that moment, I knew that we were leaving.
Wasn't quite
wow.
wanted to break it to Maya.
Yeah, no. So how old were you at the time, Maya? You must have been...
I think I just turned 10.
Just had
just before we left, yeah.
Okay. And it's interesting, Jay, that you say that you don't remember the actual move, but do you remember the flight to Australia or any weird things like, you know, when I was 7, 8, 9 years old, I don't remember most of anything, but I remember the random thing, like this bloke who was sitting next to me on the aeroplane. I just remember staring at his weird shoes. I don't know if you have any strange memories.
Yeah, I remember Dubai quite well. Staying there when the stop off for 3 days. Not much else really. Not the plane there or back. Well, there and to Dubai and then to Australia. But that's kind of it.
Remember we had a little leaving party for you both?
Yeah.
Kind of.
Okay. This is why we take photographs.
You know, from the age from 7 to 14, they're quite significant years, aren't they? So you probably don't realise how much you've soaked in, and it will kind of show up at a stage when you're probably not even expecting it or looking for it.
Yeah, very much, absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. So tell me, you got to Australia then, right? And what happened?
Well, luckily, Grant had been living there for a couple of months beforehand. So he'd checked out the flora and fauna and figured out lots of do's and don'ts. And he was almost, along with a couple of very good friends out there, our Bible, really, you know, in terms of things like even driving it's not completely different, but it is different to the UK. Sun safety, sun awareness is vital out there, you know, and you can get it quite wrong. Certain things that you have to follow to make sure that you know, stay out of the sun at certain times of the day. Lots of things like that were just helpful because whilst it's English speaking and it is a totally different culture, it is, and it's a different place altogether where you buy your food, how you shop. It is very different to the UK.
It's very much more like America
Yeah.
than the UK, or certainly Perth is anyway, the West Coast,
Yeah.
which is where we went to. But even, I think, smoothing or paving the way a little bit, going out, staying with friends, I was able to find a house for us, which when I got there, or when we moved out, Western Australia was booming as an economy, which is, you know, one reason, or probably the main reason why I got a job so easily out there and so quickly, was the economy was booming and there was a real shortage of rental properties. So my first couple of months out there was spent viewing rental places and desperately trying to secure a house for us and buy a car, and everything was so expensive as a result. It was really quite daunting. You know, it was quite a stressful couple of months really, settling in, working in a sort of alien environment somewhat. But yeah, just knowing that I had a family joining me. I was coming back for Christmas, and then we were moving out together. So I had sort of an 8-week period to sort everything out for us to settle into, really. So that was quite daunting for me, but it certainly made life easier when we all arrived. That we had a house, we had a car.
We had a bed.
We had a bed.
We
had some IKEA furniture and, you know, begged, borrowed and stole.
We had a swimming pool, we weren't that hard done by.
No. Yeah, it was a bit green.
But of course, you know, on this side, whilst frantically running around doing that, because we were not at all set on moving out there and living there forever, this was not our forever idea. We were going to do it for a period of time. What that period of time, we don't know. Whilst we're making that decision, I was frantically trying to pack up the house. We organised agents to come and rent it. So I was doing viewings. I was trying to wrap my side of the business up. I was trying to make sure the children had as full experience as they could and trying to say goodbye to people. So emotionally, that period of time was highly, highly charged. You know, it was full on. It really was.
It was only Jay who was oblivious to
it. Yeah, Jay. To have been 7 at that time.
Oh, bless him. Yeah, that sounds pretty stressful. Obviously, in my head, I'm just thinking of the sunny beaches.
Oh, they came later. That was all good.
So what was, like, when you got there, everything was settled, you had a place to stay, so there was no pressure there, 8 weeks to kind of have a house, have a car, wait for the family to turn up. And then what was it like? What was a day in the life of living in Perth in Australia like?
Maya, do you want to start with that one?
Yeah, well, to begin with, it was sort of just getting to know the areas that we were living in and going to the beach and seeing what things were like there.
Well, luckily we arrived during school holidays. It was the first week of, or second or third week of
their summer
holidays. So we arrived into a nice long break for the children, which was a blessing, really.
Absolutely, just to get them acclimatised to all these different and new ways.
And then Jay and I started school in sort of February time. And then from then on, it was sort of a daily routine of us walking to school together. Then after school, we'd have our normal activities. And that's sort of where Jay and I both started getting into sports as well. So we'd have our different sporting clubs, music as well. Jay picked up the guitar and I was playing the clarinet at the time. So we had our various clubs, and then we'd go home and just swim in the pool and do our homework and just relax a bit.
I have a question in that, as a family, you're all incredibly active and quite sporty, outdoorsy. And did Australia help make that bigger, or was that something you think would have happened naturally living in the UK anyway?
I think it was kind of a mix of both, because Dad's had a sporty past with doing the
So did Mum. Thank you.
Mainly Dad. And, well, Australia, they really supported, like, Sports Day was a really big thing out there for the kids. And, yeah.
It's a very outdoorsy life. On a Sunday, you have surf life saving up and down, hundreds of kilometres of beach up and down even West and East Australia. So you have all the children going out and learning different surf skills, but also swim safety and doing drills and things. But every day you could do a different type of sport. And we did immerse the kids into it. The children loved it. So they picked up probably more than they would have done here, but it really promoted that.
I think, yeah, definitely we would have still pursued all the sporting activities here that we still do now. But in the sort of climate over there, with nice summer evenings or even nice winter evenings, when you finish school or work, it is so much easier to get the motivation just to go out and do something. It's not like the work-life balance there is any better. You don't get more time off at all. But what you can do with that spare time is amazing. We used to go and kayak down on the river and swim in the sea, or go to, they've got umpteen outdoor swimming pools. So we really got into our swimming over there. Yeah. We all learned to swim properly for the first time, really, in terms of covering more than a few lengths.
The pools are 50 metre long, so there's no way, you can't just sort of stop in the middle and think, right, I can grab onto something. There's nothing to grab onto. You've just got to, you're thinking, goodness me, I've done 200 metres and, that's literally 4 lengths on that,
Yeah. And down in the sea, you don't want to hang around for too long anyway. You want to keep moving with always the threat of a great white somewhere, so you tend to keep shifting around a bit there. So yeah, I mean, it was fantastic. It really made it easier for us to all enjoy sport together, I think.
Yeah.
There wasn't the complaints of it being wet and cold and a struggle to get out of the house. Quite the opposite, really. It was
you very rarely
we had to
live
stop
inside.
ourselves from going out sometimes, because it was just because of the dangers of the sun and the heat at times. But yeah, it was amazing for that.
One of Jay's extracurricular activities was to go sailing, and that was at the end of our street. Their school was on one end and we had the river at the other end of the street. And I used to be off on a Friday, so sometimes I'd go to the river to watch them all spinning around, usually just in a circle. But the fact that he was sailing as an extracurricular activity is quite mind-blowing. It is amazing.
Can I ask, can we do a round robin again? Can you run through individually what sports you take part in, what your fun physical pastime activities are, running, swimming, whatever? And it would be good if you would also share what tournaments or what achievements you have under your belt, because I know there's a fair few there. So Grant, I'll start with you.
Yeah, are we talking about now or then or just...
Then and now and everything that you've accumulated over the years.
Okay, cool. Yeah, well, I've always been a keen runner. I started running from a very young age, and I've carried that on through in Australia and still run now. Whilst I was in Australia, I started cycling. My knees were starting to hurt with the running a bit, so I started cycling over there, which was great. There's cycle paths, and it's really well set up in Perth for cycling, and the weather's just great for it. So I picked up road cycling while I was there and learned to swim properly. So putting the three together, fairly inevitably, I suppose, I've got into triathlons in recent years. So I do enjoy putting all three together and not competing, but just taking part in triathlons. And I've carried that on in the UK and completed a few, should we say. So I've done a half Ironman distance now. I was supposed to do an Ironman this year, but the pandemic put paid to that. So you never know. Maybe in a few years' time, I'll reach that goal. But I've done a marathon since we came back as well. So I'm kind of pushing the limits of my 50-year-old body now.
There are no limits. No limits.
You tell my knees that.
Oh, yeah, what is it with knees? Oh gosh, yeah, I like you enjoy a lot of running, but my knees.
Yeah, no.
Yeah, I'll have to look at cycling.
Yeah, no, it's definitely something that I think is the way forward at a certain age. It's a lot less lower impact. I don't so much enjoy the swimming. I must admit, on a cold night, going up to the pool isn't my idea of fun. But it's kind of necessary for the choices I make, I guess.
Go on, Jane. Go on, you go.
So we started swimming before we went to Australia, so we carried that on there. But we picked up hockey in Australia, which was very big. It was quite a lot of pressure to be good at hockey, especially when you were 7, 8 years old. And yeah, I played that until about year 8, so good 5, 6 years. That was quite fun. But recently, because Dad's got me into triathlons, so the running, the cycling, the swimming all put together. That's been...
You're part of a great club, aren't you?
Yeah.
Love a good triathlon.
Yeah, we're very lucky here because not obviously, but the Brownlee brothers live not too far away from where we are in Leeds, and there's an amazing training facility nearby. So Jade's joined the club, Leeds Bradford Triathlon, and they use the Brownlee Training Centre. So we're very lucky to have that on our doorstep, really. And a lot of the kids around here are very motivated by just the success that those two brothers have had in the Olympics. So it's fantastic for the area that we're in.
Yeah,
that's amazing. Carry on, please. Next.
So when I picked up netball when I was in Australia and fell in love with the sport, really. I think I played that up until I played it when we got back as well, up until last year. And yeah, netball is one of my favourite sports, really. But whilst we were out in Australia, that's when Mum and Dad took us out for our first runs together as a family. And I'm not as motivated to get out as Mum and Dad are, but I do sometimes. And since we got back as well, I did my first 10k race.
Yeah, you did very well.
But whilst we were out there, I also, when I went to move to high school in Australia, they were all about the sports, and we had really big PE lessons, and I got into athletics a bit there. I used to do an after school club that included like high jumps and 800 metre runs. They were sort of my favourite two aspects of athletics. And hockey, again, in PE was a big sport that I really enjoyed. But since then, I think I quite enjoy a wide variety of sports, and I'm hopefully starting tag rugby next summer as well.
Brilliant.
And me, little old me, my little legs keep running. Can't catch my long-legged children up. Yeah, it's very infuriating. They've got really long legs compared to me. But yeah, still try and run 2 or 3 times a week. And I have a bunch of very inspiring, mad friends who sign us up for various events. So when it was all possible, we did 10Ks, half marathons. There's a really ridiculous race here called the Romball Stride, and it's a 23-mile event once a year. So Grant and I have both done that. I'd love to say I've beat him, but no, it's up and undulate. It's in the moors, and it's off cross country. It's in the middle of nowhere. It's beautiful. So we've done lots of competing like that for events. whilst out there swimming as well with the family, and really, really, really got into my yoga. So I used during lockdown, there were weeks where I did yoga absolutely every single day and just loved it. And we've been, when we go away, when we've travelled, I'll try and look for a place that does a yoga class, because it's always nice to do something like yoga in front of a beach, some amazing setting. So I love the whole yoga aspect. It's just so grounding. And getting closer to that half century, I feel like I'm not as flexible as I used to be. So this is a really good way to keep the body as elastic as I can.
I have to say that you may be talking about age, but I totally worship you guys, because I'm just like, this is where I want to be. I'm constantly like, every time I'm out running, going to the gym and doing anything, I'm like, this is it. This is good. So hats off. I do have a question though for Maya and Jay, and possibly even it might be applicable to all of you, because did you find that being so active helped you concentrate better at work and in your study?
Well, you too.
Yeah, definitely. I find, especially if you're ever in like a bad mood, and Mum always says, just go out for a run, it clears your head.
Easier than having an argument with her, isn't it?
So in that sense, it definitely, doing something physical, even if it's just a walk, it definitely helps clear your mind, and it really does help for concentration and just to be productive with your schoolwork as well.
Yeah, go for it, Jay.
I found it makes it a lot easier to make friends as well. Like if you share sports in common, you can have a chat about it or talk about it, and the feeling after you've done the sport is great, even though you might ache a bit. It's, mentally, it's quite pleasing.
The aching's the reward of it all, really.
That's a brilliant way to look at it. I think you touched on it, Maya, where you said in Australia you first started to go out for family runs. And even though it's not something that motivates you, you'd go along. In what other ways did you learn about each other in Australia? And also, how has that impacted you, the way that you guys are now together? Because I would love to be able to just go away somewhere with the kids. And it's like a learning journey, because your dynamics, yes, as parent and child are always there, but you're also learning in the same environment, in the same space, in different ways. So what did you learn about each other in Australia, and what did you learn about yourself?
So as Jay and I were talking about this, and we were just saying that we were able to look at Mum and Dad and look up to them because they've been through moves before, and we were able to realise that they know how to adapt and change to situations as well, which kind of helped Jay and I adapt to the new surroundings as well. But I think for the first, because it was their summer holidays over there, we were able to enjoy each other's company and be around each other for those 6 odd weeks. So we were able to sort of change together and bond a lot stronger, which is nice.
I just think that hopefully we have been motivating and inspiring for both of the children, and to say that you can take risks. Taking a risk to marry Grant was a big one, wasn't it? But you just know that somehow, some way, you have to look for the positive, even in times where it is difficult. And, we did encounter difficulties whilst we were living there. It wasn't plain sailing. There are times in any family life, don't have to be abroad for that. But what we hope the children have seen is a solid unit and support for one another, helping each other to grow, learn, and just having those really special shared experiences and quality times as a unit. I just feel that we really have created a close bond, and hopefully the children will be able to take this and other experiences into their lives, and be able to know confidently that things may go wrong, but lots of things will go right, and they can learn from any errors along the way.
Yeah, definitely. I think the teamwork aspect is key to it all. We all play our part in making something, a big move like that, a success, right throughout. A lot of the time when I was there, I was working away for fairly long periods. I'd spend up to a month at a time working away, even when I was in Australia. The work isn't always on the doorstep, and it's a big place. So in order to make the travel worth it, you've got to go long distances sometimes. And knowing that Trupti and the kids were self-sufficient, going about their business, getting on with daily life without any real hassles was massive for me to be able to do what I was doing, really, from a selfish point of view, I guess. But we've worked hard to instill that in Maya and Jay, that we're all part of a unit and that we've all got to pull together. It's not always plain sailing. And I learned that they're very resilient, really. When we were out there, they can get on really well without me being around sometimes. And that made it a lot easier for me when we're out there and since we've come back.
That's amazing.
And I think we need to add to that is that some of the people that we met along the way can't not have a mention, in this point. And I am an Acharya, so, we're all very good at talking, aren't we? Making friends and being able to strike conversation, which isn't easy. You're in situations you're alien, you don't know people, but I always remember a lot of my mum's upbringing, and those things come back to you as well whilst you're raising your children. And I don't think if I was able to make the friends that I did that are Australian or they're British but still living out there, my experience would be as rich or confident and as solid as it was. And they certainly helped, because we didn't add, after 2 weeks of Grant settling us when we first landed, and we had bare minimums, we had a knife each, a plate each, we had a bed each, and that was it until our cargo and shipment arrived 2 months later. Grant went away for a fortnight in the middle of nowhere, so I'm left with the children in a really amazing environment. And there were many spells like that. I remember starting my first job. I was doing lots of supply teaching, but I started my first job after a year. And Grant said, I'll be in Brisbane for a couple of weeks. 6 weeks later, it ended up being quite a long job.
It was nice though.
It was nice there. It was away and that's a 5-6 hour flight away. And I think the friends that I made were absolutely central to a lot of our happiness. And a lot, the families out there that we met were very warm and inviting and very dear. And a couple of them we still FaceTime on a regular basis, and I missed them, and I was hoping to have gone out this last year to be with them and to catch up, but it just wasn't meant to be. So yeah, there's a lot that goes into the whole mix, doesn't it? When you're living abroad.
Yeah. And I think that's one of the most important things, right? It's the environment, it's the atmosphere, it's the connections that make it real. So what do you miss about Australia? You've already mentioned the friends, the relationships. What do you miss about being there? And while you were there, what did you miss about being here?
I think the main aspect of being back home was the family side of it, because all our family were living here. We had one of Mum's distant cousins who was living there, but just being able to see our cousins, and our youngest cousin had just been born just as we moved out, and we hadn't seen him yet or met him, so that was a big thing that we missed. But and grandparents, of course. But missing it from now, missing Australia, probably the fish and chips on the beach on the sunset is one of the main things. Just the views of the beaches, because obviously we don't get that around here. And travelling and exploring a new place is one of the main things that I think I miss.
And what about you?
I miss our kayaks. We had a couple of kayaks.
Yeah.
And as I say, the river was at the end of our road. And on a Sunday, you typically go there with a bunch of friends and you'd be kayaking. And before you know it, there'd be a couple of dolphins around you. And you can't beat that for a Sunday afternoon. I do miss that. I miss my friends, but the family did have and does have a big pool. We missed when we were living there, we said at the outset that we weren't going to go forever, but then it could have turned into, and very nearly did turn into, a permanent move. But when we came back for a holiday just after about 13, 14 months later, it was just apparent that this is where our heart really belonged, and we haven't regretted going out whatsoever, and we certainly haven't regretted coming back. We've just adapted. You can still use the outdoors, albeit with a hat and gloves and coat and appropriate wear, but nothing deters us from seizing the day and getting out there. And it's just brilliant that we've had that opportunity as a family to have done that. But I really did miss my friends here, and I really miss my family here. So, yeah, it just feels lovely to have done both and being back where we feel we belong as a family.
Definitely. Yeah. I honestly don't think I miss, apart from the people, our good friends over there that we made and continue to have, apart from the people, I honestly don't think I miss anything about Australia. The weather's never been a massive draw for me personally.
Well, you were born in Northumberland,
well,
so
the northeast,
it's used to the cold.
it's coming back to the weather. You'll never hear me moan about the weather in the UK. I think it's great, the variation. I even found the monotony of the sun a little bit boring at times in Oz, and I don't really miss anything about it. I loved being there, don't get me wrong. I'd had a great time, thoroughly enjoyed the 3 and a bit years I was there, or we were there. But I did miss the diversity of the UK, of Europe, having different cultures on the doorstep. We could fly for 5-6 hours and still be in Australia, which was great for us exploring for a period of time. But I think we saw and experienced most of Australia while we were there. So, we ticked most of the boxes. We'll definitely be back. We'll be back to visit friends and see a few of the places we didn't get to see. But in terms of where I want to be, I was missing the UK and Europe in particular. I think just having a different country within an hour, 2 hours flight.
Yeah. And it's interesting, Maya says, she misses the travelling. I don't think my children have done too badly since their 4 years of return here. We've been to quite a few places since returning, and hopefully continue to travel once all the restrictions are lifted and what have you. So, yeah.
Thank you for that. It's really interesting what you were saying about just being here and being able to get to Europe, just that having that diversity within a short space of time, whereas Australia is so much bigger, even though there was so much to explore.
Well, one of our first trips coming back into Europe was we flew to Sorrento from Leeds, Bradford, and there they were walking around Pompeii, and it was an hour and a half flight, and we were from doorstep to Sorrento, there within 3.5, 4 hours. And since then, we could just list off a whole load of places these guys have been to, which is wonderful. It is something that, the different languages, the different cuisine, and really historical sites that they've seen that are thousands of years old. It's just remarkable to have that.
Totally with you. And it's something that we hope will be different. So have you got a list off the top of your head where you can just reel off names, locations, cities and countries that you've been to since you've been back?
Right, Urmi, he's old enough now to remember. So let's get the 15-year-old. He's still awake. Go name somewhere where you went, where you saw turtles hatching, Jay.
That's a bit precise. Costa Rica. We went in 2017 summer, and that was amazing. Loved it.
Yeah. I'm going to let them continue.
Went to Holland last year. Well, Mum and Dad were in Colombia. Maya was in America, so they got a better deal. But so lovely.
You could have come with us.
I could have.
No one's forced you.
We've been to Spain a couple of times as well, and France.
Yeah. And
and Sorrento, Italy, they've been to. So quite a few places. We went to Scotland and Wales. Experienced those, yeah.
Yeah, it's not bad given that we haven't been able to go anywhere for a year.
Yeah, that's all packed in 3 years, isn't it?
Yeah, no, I know. And I'm hoping for this episode to be out kind of February, and I'm hoping that things will be in a different position then. Right now I'm sitting here with everything crossed.
I hope it's been useful. I don't know.
Yes, it has.
Can Jay mention the snow? When you said what you missed.
You must have missed the snow, surely.
When you should have seen that when they came back, and we'd been in the UK approximately 3 weeks, and we had a dump of snow, and honestly, I just remember the children looking at me
for hours.
And of course, we didn't have all the kit, and I just said, put on whatever you can. Bear in mind, Jay was still 11. And do you remember how long you were out? In fact, they managed to get the whole of our neighbours.
They've only just come in.
They managed to get most of the neighbours out to play snowball fight. Do you remember that? You must have missed. Can you say you missed the snowball?
I missed the snow.
Do you know what? There's just something either about sunshine or snow that just makes everything look perfect.
Oh, it was.
Yes.
It was. And autumn, I think no one can, you can't underestimate the season, the autumn season is just...
Out there, it's either heavy rain, like storms, or it's boiling hot most years. So
there is really two seasons there.
Yeah.
But it's, when you're used to 4 seasons, it takes a bit of getting used to, doesn't it? The 2-season lifestyle.
Yeah.
But I mean, I think we love spring and autumn, don't we? So I personally miss that to a certain degree over there, just having the 4 seasons every year.
Something else you might want to add is that we on the East Coast. I think there are lots and lots of opportunities to go and see music, live music in Western Australia, but it does come at a cost, and also because the population is just over 1 million, if I'm right, in Perth itself. When you have a band or you have something coming over to play live music, tickets just go. I mean, it's worse than Glastonbury. It's incredible, and that's something that we've really loved coming back to, is all the live music opportunities, whether it be Navratri and Garba, which has been brilliant, and there's been some sort of Indian singers, Mika Singh and that kind of thing, but also all the other bits and pieces that Grant and I had the privilege to go to. And a couple of years ago, it's a tiny little venue in sort of smack bang in the student area, and Grandmaster Flash came, and we just thought, throwback 1980s. Well, for £19, even if he's rubbish, we'll go home. Unbelievable. For £19, and he's come back to Leeds. It's obviously a draw in West Yorkshire for the guy. We don't even know if it's a real grandmaster. We think it is, But he's come back 3 times, and that's something that we really missed during the pandemic, because the children love their music, as I've said, and they have been to gigs with us, which has been another lovely thing. Aside the sport, apart from sport, we do some fun things as well, And to see all the live music has been incredible, really accessible and affordable and just fabulous. The same sort of, high that you get after a run, you get after going to a music venue. Someone that we saw Soul to Soul, childhood heroes, really, and you're up and close to them, and you think, wow, I'm just in Manchester. I went with Mai to see the Spice Girls. That was a fabulous day out, out, and something that we didn't get all the time in Western Australia.
Yeah, that makes absolute sense. And I think you're right. We do generally here and across Europe and kind of take these things for granted. And I think definitely shown us how much. So there's a big difference for what you experience out there. Also, just for the listeners, I know what Garba is and Navratri, but if you could just explain what Garba and Navratri is.
So it sort of precedes Diwali on Happy Hindu New Year, and it's 9 days of dancing. It's a really sort of, it's around Durga Ma, one of the deities, and it's a festival of dance, really, and it's Indian dancing, and it's taken a different form. I mean, goodness me, the moves that occur now, Maya and I sometimes YouTube them beforehand just to get a little bit ahead of the game. It's just electric. It's a great vibe. We have another Indian Gujarati family that we're very close to in Leeds, and that's our annual. We do get together anyway, but there's that, and my cousin lives down the road in Wakefield, so it's always lovely to get together at the temple or whichever venue it's at. And we dance 3 or 4 hours, and it's brilliant. It's brilliant.
But, yeah, I've taken some of my friends to it as well, and they just say how much they enjoy the atmosphere of it all, and especially the saris.
Wrap them in a sari.
Yeah, they love it. Yeah.
And I just love the fact that Maya and Jay's come along as well. I just love the fact that they want to immerse themselves in it. And it's just brilliant to have that. And we actually did go to an amazing Garba gathering in Perth.
Yeah.
It was beautiful. There is a small Gujarati community there. And we managed to get tickets, because again, it's like hotcakes. Tickets are like hotcakes for anything, Trying to get hold of them is almost like gold dust. And we went with another Gujarati family that we know out there who are wonderful. They're still out there. They're there for keeps. And it's always just great fun.
Just one last question. Okay. Now, you said that getting married was a risk. And to explain to the listeners that we're talking about being marrying two cultures. If you could just explain the bigger picture, that would be helpful.
I'm letting Fuad do this.
No, I don't. No, you have to do this bit.
What happened? You met a lovely Indian girl at university, and then you married her.
Yeah, exactly. It was no big drama for me. Well, it was, I suppose. Yeah, I mean, I can give the background to.
Please do.
When I met Trupti at university, very early on in our relationship, she made it quite clear that this wasn't normal from her point of view, from Trupti's family's point of view. Culturally, it wasn't normal. To me, like you say, it was just I met a lovely girl and fell in love, and, and that was that. So there was no obstacles from my point of view. But yeah, absolutely, I very quickly my naivety was brushed aside, and Trupti let me know that it was a big deal, her going out with me. And when we went to Hong Kong, she moved out. I don't know if your mum will listen to this, actually. Let's find out. No. I moved out. She came out a few months later and joined me, and we lived out in Hong Kong. And in a way, that was great because we were anonymous over there. Family-wise, it wasn't common knowledge, and it didn't have to be because we were out of the way. There was no internet back in those days, no Facebook, no Instagram, no nothing. We were just existing in Hong Kong in our own little world, and then. But when we came back, that little bubble burst. It was absolutely time to tell the family, and I'll let Trupti carry on from there.
My mom, who is a feisty young lady, and she came out a couple of times to Hong Kong to stay and visit, which was brilliant. She came out in 96 and 97 and spent time. And she knew, if the truth be told, she's, can't pull the wool over mummy's eyes. And she had an awareness. And it was definite, that time together enabled us to know that actually this is what we wanted for the rest of our lives. And it was solid, and we did want to be together. And it wasn't a short-term folly, if you like. So it was going to be something for the ever and ever. And in some ways, it allowed us that time to really get to know each other and to make that kind of promise to each other. So when I came back, it was obvious that if we were going to continue the relationship, we'd have to get married, and that was okay with both of us. And when I told my mum, she was absolutely fantastic. If anybody knows my mum out there, she's had a tricky life. She was widowed at a very young age, and her philosophy on life is one that wants everyone to be happy. Happiness is absolutely the most important thing. And she knew that I was, and in fact, she probably likes Grant and adores him more than her own daughter. She just...
she's a good judge of character.
I was very, very fortunate that her humanitarian outlook in life preceded any prejudice, preceded any racism and any conventional behaviour. She met Grant, she knew Grant out in Hong Kong, she'd met him both times when she came out, and she just said he's just adorable, he's lovely. And as anyone who knows what Grant's like, he's embraced Hinduism, he's embraced our cultures. We had a huge Indian wedding as well as a church wedding, and that's what we've been like throughout our whole relationship. We have a lot of mutual respect for one another's identities and cultures, and we have instilled that in our children. We've brought them up to allow differences to exist, but at the same time giving them a strong flavour of both cultures, and both understand Gujarati. They speak as well, not completely fluently, but they do speak, and they speak to my mom every single day in Gujarati. And I think I'm just very, very thankful to that lady and my brother and my sister who supported me and us and Grant's parents, because, it wasn't one-sided. She was concerned that it wouldn't be reciprocated, and our in-laws and extended family on that side are equally amazing. So we are very lucky.
Thank you for sharing that. I'm still wowed because I think what you said and in your experiences, because at the time there was a lot of cultural pressure and cultural expectations on what should and should not be done. And that's tough to kind of look beyond that and still be mindful of everything and step outside it. But do you think it matters so much nowadays?
I'd like to think not, but actually we have experienced, and my children sadly have experienced, what's the right word? They have experienced some, like, not conflicting views from, some families that would prefer it to stay within one culture. And that saddens me. I mean, Grant and I, we've been married 21 years. It's not uncommon now to see couples cohabiting or in mixed relations. But yeah, I would like to say and hope that things have moved forward. Unfortunately, I really don't think in all cultures there is a willingness to accept someone from outside.
It's definitely better than it was.
Oh yeah,
So,
yeah.
certainly, things, times have moved on somewhat. Yeah, I was going to say something else there, but I'll probably better not.
I hope you enjoyed that. Thank you for joining me for this episode of Eternal Paradigm. Join me next time.